The song is quite haunting, actually. Even if you didn't listen to what the lyrics are saying, it's one of them songs that stays in the back of your head, makes your hairs in the back of your neck go up. And then when I started to read the lyrics, it was like quite shocking, you know, because I just could relate exactly to what the song was all about. My name's Sal Miller. I'm a crime writer here in Belfast.
These mist-covered mountains.
I first heard it, I was living in New York, and a young guy from Dublin was playing this, and it was a song sort of I kept sticking in my head, and it was very like a sort of a ghostly sound to it. It just kept going over and over and over in my head for days. And I thought the song was perfect because I'd just come back from a conflict myself here in the north of Ireland. Also, I had a major conflict with one of my brothers. We hadn't spoken years. Both of us are Republicans, and we have different viewpoints on how we should achieve a united Ireland. And it had spilled over many times quite violently in our family, because our family is quite a staunch Republican family, but they're very split. Some for the Good Friday Agreement, others against it. At the start I was quite young and didn't really care. It was 1972, I think, the last time we actually sat down and spoke.
Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle reached high. And though it hurt me so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms.
Last year, ironically enough, I got commissioned to do a play. It was about the conflict here in the north, and I sat down for a while trying to think of what I would write about. And eventually came back to me the sounds of the album, Brothers in Arms, and that was the name of the play.
There's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different ones.
So I had to sit and write this play, which was quite in your face, shocking, because it brought out all the skeletons in my family. And I didn't know how my family would react, and most of them welcomed the play, bar the person that I wanted to reconcile with, my brother. Sort of way reflecting back on all these lost years between he and I, not speaking. And the play, although it was commercially successful, on a personal viewpoint, for me, it was a failure because it didn't reconcile my brother and myself.
Now the sun's gone to hell, the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the stars. In every line in your palm, we're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
For me to not to be reconciled with my brother is quite daunting. It's also heartbreaking for me. It's quite difficult, you know. It's something that I think about every day, you know. I'm 55 and he is 60, and I know that doesn't maybe sound a lot, it's not very old nowadays, but because of the lifestyle that we've had, we don't really expect to live that long, to be honest with you. And each day passes, it's frightening that I think both of us are getting so old, and I wait to hear the news that he's died, or you know, probably maybe I died before him, but it's just one of those strange quests that I have in my head that the two of us will reconcile before something terrible happens to either one of us.
Brothers in Arms was written by Mark Knopfler for the Dire Straits. The album came out in 1985. In a sense, I think this is Dire Straits' swan song. It's where they finished in terms of being really in the public eye. This is the mid-1980s, a very difficult time, miners' strike, Falklands War, Margaret Thatcher, a time when a lot of people were concerned about the way the country was going. And in a sense, I think Brothers in Arms picks up on a little bit of that concern.
Some of the planes went to create more havoc at Stanley, the others to a small airstrip called Goose Green near Darwin, 120 miles to the west. There they found and bombed a number of grounded aircraft mixed in with decoys.
I'm Alan Moore. I'm a musicologist, professor of popular music at the University of Surrey. Certainly the lyrics contain words which seem to be some sort of military context. People would have read the Falklands War into that, I would have thought, in quite a big way. I must admit I don't. There's nothing particularly contemporary about either the lyrics or the way that they're set. I think one of the key things is that harmonica. That lone harmonica, which is high in the texture and which often has connotations in film music and in other popular music of sort of lonesomeness, travelling, simple life, camaraderie. It's something seen almost from the inside rather than from the outside. Think of the film scenes where you have the sound of the lone harmonica. It's often a group of half a dozen cowboys around a campfire or something like that, where the barrier between them working as a unit and outside is there, even if it's not explicit.
My name is John Ilsley, and Mark and I formed Dire Straits back in 1976. Brothers in Arms was one of a group of songs that Mark brought to the band in 1984, and it came, like most of the songs that Mark brought to the band, pretty much finished. There was something, I think, which struck us all, and we all went, that's kind of special. And it was working on quite a few different levels almost immediately, I think, for all of us, especially when we, heard the lyrics and got the feel of the thing right. Because it's got a certain powerful grace about it, I think, which is pretty amazing. Mark, I would say, almost never talks about what inspires him to write a song. I think he would prefer to leave that as the sort of the mystery of the process. I think it's also about probably what we were about, as a band. You go in as a band of brothers into a musical sort of journey, and I often felt that there were elements of that in there, the fact that he and I have certainly been working together for some considerable time then, and we were we are brothers as far as I'm concerned, I think probably as far as he's concerned, but brothers in arms, brothers with guitars. I mean, we were sort of on a journey to try and make a difference. That, Brothers in Arms does work on several different levels. If it becomes an anthem, if it becomes something that pulls people together and makes them feel more comfortable in that world, then I think it's a wonderful thing.
I am Reverend Nigel Beardsley, Royal Navy, currently working with the Royal Marines. The first time I ever heard Brothers in Arms was actually in the age of where they had cassette tapes, and I actually fancied the cover. I play a little bit of a guitar, and it was the steel guitar on the cassette cover which attracted me to it. Brothers in Arms has since then become a favourite. My son had an illness and unfortunately he died. And therefore the music's got links with him of being kind of a brothers in arms. He was only 10, but we were kind of brothers. And therefore when I joined the Royal Navy, I carried that with me, this soulful music that meant so much. And when I was then appointed to work with the Royal Marines, and we went out to Afghanistan for my first time of 6 months deployment, and we lost somebody in my unit. It was to that music I turned. So when I did a service for the lads, in my faith, yes, I could find comfort in prayer. But bearing in mind I'm dealing with lads of all faiths and none, I had to try and think what I could do, and it was Brothers in Arms that I came to.
These mist-covered mountains a home now for me. But my home is the lowlands, and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms.
I had to give a talk to all the lads on the time of year within the Islamic calendar, and they decided the best place for me to talk was inside a container. So 55 degrees heat, you're inside a container, and I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere. For some reason they'd all decided to grow moustaches, and just let's say some young lads just can't grow moustaches, and so I just picked on them. And one of these lads who had one of the weakest, I'm afraid, moustaches was a lad called James Wright, and he took the flak, bless him, he really took the flak. A week later I was called to the hospital, and when I got there it was poor James. He'd come back into the checkpoint and a rocket had come into the camp and he'd got some shrapnel and the prognosis was not good, and he came to the point where the medics decided that there was nothing else anybody could do. The only thing I could think of is that how when my own son died, it was exceptionally precious he died in my arms. I could only think that his own parents would have felt that. So whilst I'm out there, I'm almost their surrogate parent. So I held him and I did what I did for my own son in the hope that that would be good enough for his parents.
Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battles raged higher. And though they didn't hurt me so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms.
And I went to the funeral, and as they were about to walk in with James, the chord struck up. The music means so much, brothers in arms, because they are. Yes, there's an awful lot of joking, but in the end, everybody digs out for everybody else. They will do their utmost for the friend, and that's how we operate.
And now the sun's gone to hell, and the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the starlight, and every line on your palm. We're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
You'd think when you played something a lot of times that it would, you just get sort of a little bit blasé about it. But there's something about that tune, and we always used to play it at the end of the set. And towards the end, obviously there was a lot of hysteria around the band, in the 90s, the last tour, and it got pretty big and a bit out of hand, really, in a sense. So, you were playing to big audiences, but at the end of the show, to bring everything down to this poignant moment, which was Brothers in Arms, I don't think anybody failed to experience the depth of what it meant, not only to the audience, but also to the band. I mean, I very regularly got a sort of tingle down my spine because there's a remarkable, powerful restraint when it was played live. And it's also on the record as well, I have to say. And I think that's, you know, that we got that right. We got that powerful restraint there. You know, this containment of energy. Instead of it going, you know, and sort of flashing lights on our face, it was just sort of sitting there like a burning ember, you know, that was never going to go away. And I remember so often feeling a tingle down my spine every time we played it. The sort of what you call the refrain is the sort of like. So it's incredibly simple. The line is, and then you've got these swelling keyboards over the top, and then this lovely lyrical guitar, and that's all it really needs. And the verse is just—it's like a march. That's what it's like. That's what I felt on the bass. So there's something very proud about the way you play. You could put all sorts of notes in, you know, but it would be meaningless to the song, and it didn't need it. So you get this sort of stately feel to it, and I think that's the essence of the song in a way, you know. I always think that the engine room is the essence of the song anyway, but that's because I'm a bass player. You know?
If there's one area of music that most listeners are completely ignorant about the effect of, and many musicians, quite frankly, it's harmony. And because it's so hard to talk about, people assume that it's meaningless, whereas I think it's actually the most powerful effector of meaning in songs. I mean, this is our tonic, this is home, and that opening line is unambiguously home. He even talks about this being my home now. But then every other line fails to get back there. And we're expecting, but we don't get it. It's the third line. And we're expecting, but we don't get it. So the last line. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Gorgeous. That leap. But we're still not home. Of the 4 lines of the verse, the first one is unambiguously home. Second, third and fourth are pushing there, but they fail to get there. And I think that that's where the sense of yearning comes from. And I think that's the underlying emotional content, if you like, of the song, which is why it works so well for funerals, because there is this ambiguity about end and not end in the mind of so many people at funerals, particularly of loved ones. And I think that's what this particular song captures so amazingly.
My name is Tuukka Haapaniemi. I'm a Finnish bass singer in a vocal group called Club 45. My father, around 85, bought one of these first portable CD players, and one CD. It was a CD with a light blue cover and a magnificent looking guitar on it, and that record was Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. Even though I was a small child at that time, I listened to that record for hours and hours. I didn't understand the words at that time, but there was something about Mark Knopfler's voice that made me feel there was a soul in this song. Even though I literally didn't understand anything, I felt that this is an important song. It holds an important message. So my father, who was a gospel musician and a music teacher, when he bought the CD and he played it, I felt that he actually gave me a gift. My father loved it and I loved it, and I later on went to Sibelius Academy to become a music teacher myself, like my father. And a couple of years after that, we started this vocal group, Club 45. I think it was around 2008 8 when we got a request to perform in a TV gala, and the producer suggested that we sing Brothers in Arms. I started to think about my fatherhood. Back then, my daughter just was born. And when I listened and when I sang this piece, I thought of my father who had introduced me with a song, then me being a father, and fathers fighting in a war, sons fighting, daughters, mothers. That was overwhelming. My daughter listens to our version of Brothers in Arms, and she sings along. And I know that she doesn't understand the lyrics, but I'm sure that she understands the emotion of the song. Everyone in a war, they are someone's sons, someone's daughters, they are fathers, their mothers. Just the insanity of fighting against each other. These mist-covered mountains are a home now for me, but my home is the lowlands, and always will be. I enjoy singing this song because the calmness that it holds, and I've noticed that it is an important song for the audience also. I think it moves people, that it touches one's soul so deep.
Even if you had 50,000 people in front of you and you started playing Brothers in Arms, there was suddenly everybody would go quiet. And invariably, especially in Europe, people would start lighting things. And so you'd look out over an absolute sea of lights. You could just see them gently swaying to the beat. And I think it kind of brought everybody together in a sense. And I think they would feel part of the track, because the whole thing about it, the whole thing about the song is that it sort of envelops people, pulls people together. You know, I think the audience, they felt that they were part of this band of brothers, if you like. And everybody just went away feeling, yeah, good. You know, I feel satisfied.
With very little sense of melody. There's a particular leap at the beginning which is notable. There's a particular line right at the very end, a particular line of melody. The rest of it is almost as if spoken, almost as if what we're getting is access to his private thoughts, which is quite special. And I think this is possibly one of the reasons why it's been picked up and used in soundtracks, because often what a filmmaker will want to do is to try and give you some sort of insight into the inner world of one of the characters at a particular point. So a song which seems to get into the inner world of the singer is a very good way of doing that. And probably the key example is the close of, I think it was the second series of The West Wing.
Well, my name's Snuffy Walden, and I'm a composer. And I've worked with Aaron Sorkin on 3 different series, the first one being Sports Night. The second one was a wonderful series called The West Wing. One of the best-loved episodes of the first few years was an episode that Aaron wrote called Two Cathedrals. And it was unique in the fact that a lot of times people will write into the script, they'll express a desire for a song, but most of the time that gets changed because of either financial reasons or availability of the song. It was always clear from the moment I got that first script that the Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms, was going to be the end piece of this entire show.
Has there been any discussion of a special prosecutor?
Tomorrow morning, the president will direct the Attorney General to appoint a special prosecutor, yes. I can't see, Joan!
It was truly a unique situation when Aaron wrote into the script this song. There was no question that this song was going to end the show, which is really quite rare. And the reason I think the song worked so well in it, the piece was about rising above something for self and doing something for the collective. In the West Wing, there was always a battle going on between right and wrong.
Please, I can only answer 14 or 15 questions at once. How?
Brothers in Arms is sort of a term about war, but My feeling was that it was a much more general look at life and the battles of life and how we band together, as his team in the White House did, to do what is right.
I can't comment on a witness list that doesn't exist, but I imagine subpoenas will be issued to most senior White House staff, including myself.
It's a wonderful kind of counterplay between the sadness and the longing that's in the song, as well as the great hope that's in it. And I think what finally resonates for me is the hope in the song, that together we can do what one couldn't do by themselves. Well, even though it's a very dark piece, it always feels hopeful to me.
You have the president coming up to give this make or break press conference, and you see him moving through the rain with his entourage, getting into the car, getting out of the car. All the process is followed, and over the top you have this song playing almost throughout. I mean, this is 5 minutes worth of song. What on earth has it to do with that situation? It seems on the surface to have absolutely nothing to do with it, except that there is that inner core of backbone, if you like, that the song has, which I think is what is conveyed in that sequence in The West Wing, that we know Bartlett is coming to a very, very difficult decision.
Yes, Sandy.
Mr. President, can you tell us right now if you'll be seeking a second term?
I'm sorry, Sandy, there was a bit of noise there. Could you repeat the question?
Can you tell us right now if you'll be seeking a second term?
And in a sense, what the song is telling you is that he is coming to that decision during this 5-minute spread. It doesn't tell you what it is. I mean, music doesn't tell you what it is, but it tells you how it is. And that seems to me to be why it works so well at that point.
All I can remember is when I had to finally put an ending on it, I had to try to play like Mark. It was one of the toughest things I could ever had to do in West Wing. And he's just a very hard man to try to be.
Soul Music was produced by Lucy Lund, and next week Soul Music will explore how Bach's St. Matthew Passion, written in 1727, still touches and changes people's lives today.
My name is Andrew Schulman. I live in New York City, and I'm a professional musician. I'm a classical guitarist. I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and given a very, very, very small chance of living. I had the surgery, and there was one miraculous thing, which was that my surgeon was the only doctor who thought it was possible that it wasn't cancer, and he was right. It was a kind of inflammation, a kind of situation where every indication was cancer, but it wasn't. It's something that would have still killed me, probably. So I had to have the surgery, but it wasn't cancer. On the 3-minute gurney ride from the operating room to the surgical intensive care unit, I got the other end of the stick, which is that 1 in 20,000 people every year who've had surgery, major surgery with one or more big blood transfusions, as I had 2, will get the wild card of surgery, which is for reasons not involving any mistake being made, they will still go into anaphylactic shock. And in most cases, the person dies. And in the final minute of the 3-minute ride to the surgical ICU, I was clinically dead for about a minute. And fortunately, there was a bed open right at the entranceway of the surgical ICU. And within about 1 minute, they had me back. I was still, however, right on the precipice. I was very critically ill. I was immediately put into a medically induced coma. And in the first 3 days of the coma, not a single doctor or nurse or my wife, who was at my side the whole time, thought I was going to live. And in the middle of the 3rd day, my wife looked up at the computer monitor, as the nurses did, and the vital signs on the computer monitor showed that I was going into the final decline. They were dropping precipitously. I was leaving. My wife sees what's going on, and she is desperate. But in her desperation, she had an inspiration. She happened to have been looking in her bag for her cell phone to call my mother. And she saw my iPod. They put the earbuds in, one in my ear, one earbud in my wife's ear. And the iPod playlist is in alphabetical order. So Bach, B was the first letter, and BWV 244 is the St. Matthew Passion. It was just the first on the list.
The Matthew Passion is the most dramatic portrayal of the betrayal, the taking into custody, the scourging, the committal, the crucifixion, and then finally the putting to rest in his grave of Jesus Christ.
They clicked on it, they played it for 30 minutes, and by the time they finished playing it, I had stabilized for the first time in 3 days. The numbers were heading back up, and after the St. Matthew Passion was played, I stabilized, and there were no more crises after that. I'm somebody who can say that I couldn't live without Bach. The nurses to this day still call it the St. Matthew miracle.
I think when it comes to such a powerful story, then one gets incredibly humanly moved as well, and it's pretty well impossible to sit through the St. Matthew Passion, whether you're on the platform or in the audience, without weeping at some point, or nearly weeping, and feeling incredibly moved.